Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank, and today we're going to talk about Star Wars. And it certainly has nothing to do with the fact that there's a new movie coming out, or that Rian Johnson was announced that after Last Jedi he gets to do his own trilogy for Star Wars. No. It has nothing to do with that. Okay, it has everything to do with that. But what we're going to talk about today is the direction Star Wars has been heading in, and some of the other materials, not the movies. And what I'm hoping to see actually in the movie itself. So, going into Star Wars when Disney made the purchase and became our literal dark empire of madness and wonder, they established, with the help of Lucasfilm, the Legends continuity, which was basically only a certain amount of things in Star Wars actually happened. And for those of you that don't know, the EU, the original EU, was everything that happened after Return of the Jedi, everything that happened before Phantom Menace, and a bunch of stories in between. And when Disney made the purchase, Disney owned Star Wars, said, okay, let's scrap that. Let's call it Legends continuity. It might have happened, it may not have happened. And this is kind of how you approach a reboot for the most part. And this is kind of a soft reboot, sort of like what New 52 and DC Rebirth does, where it didn't happen until we say it happened or we reference it happened. Like, for example, with Batman, it was supposed to be like he was supposed to be, like everybody else, only active for about 5 years. The next stretch is the 10 years. And then we see Bane. Bane mentions he broke Batman, so now we know Nightfall to some extent is canon. But going back to Star Wars, this was a very, very radical move, and it upset a lot of people. Primarily because the EU was what some people grew up on when it came to Star Wars. Some of them found the books first, and then the films. Some really loved the story of Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker is amazing after Return of the Jedi. Just watching him grow, build up the Jedi Order successfully. He gets a girl. They get married. She's a Force user. They have a kid. He's a bit difficult. Han and Leia get married. Leia trains to be a Jedi. And their kids, yeah, they're okay. So Kylo Ren wasn't that radical a choice or direction for Han and Leia's kid, and I think that was also another issue people had, was that they're getting rehashed versions of what they already knew. So we're retconning this. We're saying that everything that happened didn't happen, so we can tell you this watered down version of another story. We see this again in Rebels when Thrawn comes into play, and I thought, well, we're establishing Thrawn, then what? Um, Darth Bane is still part of the canon because they said TCW is still canon, the Clone Wars cartoon on Cartoon Network. And what happened there? Yoda met Darth Bane in that last season. So we know that's still canon. The question is we don't know exactly the details of that canon. And this is sort of going on in the comics too. There have been a lot of Star Wars comics, some about Lando, which I didn't really care to pick up. There was a great story about Kanan from Rebels, like his story went surviving Order 66 and onward. But there's been two really good ones and another weaker one. The Star Wars title, which takes place after New Hope, with Luke, Han, and Leia just, being rebels, doing some stuff, having fun, you know, Luke getting put in his place by Vader. It was that story. That book has been fun for the most part. I haven't been reading it consistently, but it is fun when I do pick it up. I never read it and go like, "Oh, this is dull. This is dull," because what we're seeing is an expansion as to how we get from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back, and we'll probably get another comic book series, also called Star Wars, about the events between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And the other comics have been Darth Vader, and Darth Vader's first comic I felt was really good. It introduced a new character, Dr. Aphra, who was like a mercenary version of Indiana Jones. Because she actually goes looking for weapons, like, it's a priceless weapon. It belongs in a weapons factory. I'm like, you took that from Indiana Jones and just flipped it. But I felt that Darth Vader comic was a bit better than the new Darth Vader comic, if for no other reason than this new Darth Vader comic is retconning some things that I personally didn't like the idea of them being retconned. namely the idea of how a red lightsaber is made. Okay, so originally, Sith used synthetic crystals. In other words, they made the crystals, and that's where they got the red coloring from. Um, in Return of the Jedi, it was mentioned that Luke also created his own crystal for his own lightsaber. That's why it's green. When in reality, the reason they used the green lightsaber was because it didn't show up well in blue on Tatooine, so let's give him a green one. So in the new canon now, what the Sith do is they take a crystal and they bleed it. They bleed the kyber crystal. They they pour all their rage and hatred and anger, all these negative emotions into it, and that'll turn it red. And to be fair, this was an interesting idea, but I always sort of liked the other idea better. The idea that these crystals, um, they just have their colors, and that's kind of it. The idea that how you feel as a Jedi changes, or Sith changes the color, seems to be like a weird out. Like, what if you're just like you're in a Jedi temple meeting or a knighting ceremony. You got your lightsaber out, you're ready for the ceremony, and you're just like feeling a certain way. Next thing you know, your lightsaber turns red. What does everybody do? Just turn around like, that guy's a Sith. Kill him? Well, might as well kill him. I just don't know. But to be fair, um, the logic presented, I think, was pretty solid. I just didn't like the idea. There was a really cool idea about the Jedi who leave the Order, not officially, but they sort of like go on a sabbatical, take the Barash vow, and that's just them saying, okay, I'm going to leave the Jedi Order for some really intense training, and I cannot get involved in the Jedi Order no matter what. Even if they're about to be destroyed, I can't get involved until my Barash vow is finished. And a lot of people think that's what Luke is doing. That's what Luke's been doing since The Force Awakens, since, he's been missing. And coming into Last Jedi, this may be the end of his Barash vow. Hope I'm saying Barash right. Maybe it's Barash. I don't know. But going in, Luke Skywalker, I think, will be the deciding factor for The Last Jedi as a whole. Because, as I said before, Luke Skywalker, he's not just my personal favorite character in Star Wars, he was also amazing. In the EU, we see him, again, build the Jedi Order up, become insanely powerful as a Jedi. You don't break Luke Skywalker in the EU. Okay? You may knock him down, but he'll get right back up. All he needed was like a moment. Like, his wife was killed, and it took him a while, to be fair. But after the funeral, he was relatively right back up on his feet, and he was addressing the matter at hand. And it was just great. It was just great. Luke is supposed to be like this great hope in the universe. And it's just a bit depressing to see him sort of broken down. And hopefully The Last Jedi will explain what he's been doing, or why he's just on this planet doing nothing. There's a Council Forecast channel on YouTube that talked about The Force Awakens and how they felt about Luke. And the main hope was that when Rey found Luke, like somewhere else, there was like this whole group of Jedi being trained, because it just seemed a bit weird for Luke to just spend all this time just being on that planet doing nothing. Going by what we saw in the trailer, where he goes like, "It's time for the Jedi to end." He may have come to some sort of epiphany. I mean, there are books in that scene, so maybe he's been setting up, trying to figure out either way he went wrong with Kylo Ren. Maybe he's lacking something. Or maybe there are other Jedi still that he trained still out there in the galaxy, and they're waiting for Luke to come up and say, "Now's the time." We don't know just yet, and that will also determine how I feel about the Star Wars franchise. So, going further into the Star Wars films as a whole, I'm really a bit tired of prequels, and not because I don't think they're bad. Or because I think they're bad. I enjoyed the Star Wars prequels for the most part. I didn't enjoy the Phantom Menace. I enjoyed the lightsaber fight in the Phantom Menace like everybody else. I actually like the political stuff in Star Wars, because it does explain how we got to this point, how the Republic became an empire, why there's a creepy old eldritch abomination sitting in a chair whispering into a giant asthmatic robot. I like that, but the problem with it, sort of like Rebels. Rebels and Rogue One, you're telling me this interesting story. You're trying to get me excited, but I know where this is gonna end. It's like the end of the Force Unleashed 2. If you choose the light side ending and you kidnap and you arrest Darth Vader, you got him locked up. You're like, this is a really good feeling, and then you realize, oh wait, we definitely see Vader in A New Hope. This has been for nothing. This has been a fun distraction, and then you realize it didn't really matter. And that's how I feel about Rogue One, about Rebels. I think I'll enjoy Rebels more if I find out that everyone was on Alderaan. But A New Hope, like they were just all on Alderaan, they were getting ready to go, and then Alderaan's fate happens. And that's not to say I don't like or enjoy Rebels. I don't really care enough to keep watching it. I do like the Bendu and the fact that Ahsoka's back. I do like the idea of Kanan, a Padawan who had to leave the Order because of Order 66, has been in hiding the whole time, is getting back into his Jedi roots. I do like some bits of Ezra and other aspects of the series, but I just don't know. I don't feel myself compelled to keep watching. And to be fair, the only reason I really like the Bendu on just a premise idea was because he was being voiced by Tom Baker. I want every Doctor to be in Star Wars. I just think it'd just be cool. Or Star Trek. Do both, actually. And going in, there's always been this theory about the Grey Jedi of Star Wars. And the Grey Jedi are something of a bit of an oddity in Star Wars for the most part. And when I say that, I mean, what is a Grey Jedi? No one really has a set answer. I mean, you can go to any Star Wars community and you find like, I want to be a Grey Jedi. I want to use the light and dark side of the Force. I'm like, oh, but is that it? Is that really it? So for a lot of people, the Grey Jedi starts with Qui-Gon Jinn. And a Grey Jedi is defined as someone who goes against the will of the Council. But by that logic, Anakin's a Grey Jedi. He goes against the will of the Council. Kenobi's done it at least on one occasion. Quinlan Voss is. Thome has, if I'm not mistaken, done it as well. Dooku as well. I don't think disagreeing with the Council by default makes you a Grey Jedi. I think that's a bit lazy. Using light and dark techniques, that's a bit pointless. By the time of Luke's Jedi Order, you're doing it. And Luke uses Force Lightning. Other people in the Jedi Order under Luke use Force Lightning. They're not all Grey Jedi. They identify themselves as just Jedi. So the idea of using specific Force techniques makes no sense, because it's totally would be built on the premise of what the Jedi Order is at that time, what the Sith Order is at that time. And it's just designed to be really cool for the most part, but there are those who just sort of have radically different thoughts from the Jedi, but not quite Sith. One would almost call them apathetic to the idea of balance. I mean, there have been Jedi even in the Order who said, like, well, what if there is no light or dark? What if there's no such thing? What if it's just the Force and there's no such thing as the dark side? This actually happened in Star Wars, a potentium view of the Force, where it just sort of made the entire Jedi Order feel like totally meaningless. If the purpose of the Jedi is to fight off the dark side, destroy the Sith and so much, and you're saying it doesn't exist, you've literally just said, what do we exist for? And that idea was shunned. And you look at something like the Jedi Code, and it's a bit archaic in some ways. It's a bit hard to understand, and I think the point of that is, as you grow as a Padawan, as a Jedi, you understand the code more. But there was a better version of the code that came out that I think is much more interesting and more complex and easier to understand in some ways. Like the original version of the code was emotion yet peace, ignorance yet knowledge, passion yet serenity, chaos yet harmony, death yet the Force. And then there was a more redefined version of it, which was the mainstay even up to the Republic's era during the Clone Wars. There is no emotion, there is peace, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity, there is no chaos, there is harmony, there is no death, there is the Force. And that's the more rigid one, I think, that people in the Jedi Order always had trouble reconciling with, because are you saying that there can be no emotion? But as you grow, you're supposed to understand like the emotions I feel cannot take away my inner peace, my sense. In other words, you deal with your emotions as they come by, and that takes time. That takes time and growth. I personally like a Grandmaster Luke's version of the code, which is radically different. No, not radically different, just so different from the original ones. Jedi are the guardians of peace in the galaxy. Jedi use their powers to defend and protect. Jedi respect all life in any form. Jedi serve others rather than ruling over them for the good of the galaxy. Jedi seek to improve themselves through knowledge and training. And the only really common thing about this is that Jedi really stress self-improvement. They they say, okay, like we are imperfect and we strive to be something more than that. And we do that through self-improvement, through training. We know there's only like so there's a lot of humbling oneself before everything. And the weird thing about Gray Jedi is they don't really. It's not that they don't work, but that the world Star Wars is creating is sort of a world of very. It's very black and white to an extent. There's always been something I'm trying to understand about how we view the dark and the light. That there are scenes when Anakin feels cold. It's because he's sensing the dark side, and Kylo Ren, who just sort of fears the light, and we see actual manifestations of light in non-subtle ways, which was one of the things that ruined the Force Awakens. And just it's a bit difficult to figure out to an extent because the Force is never really consistent into exactly what it is, and you just kind of wonder what's the end goal, what is the set rule. There's dark, there's light. How do they work? We have people like Dooku who are not conventional Sith like Maul or Sidious. He's very refined and elegant, and he really just feels like what Maul said he was in one of the original books, a Sith pretender. But then you see people like Ventress. Ventress and Dooku are good examples of Sith who just sort of were doing this for because of failings within the system itself, not because we inherently always thought the dark side was better. And if you look at things like Jin, people call Jin a great Jedi, but Jin follows the living force idea, which is that the force will guide him into his decisions, but he is a Jedi at his core. He's been tempted, like when there was a woman he loved and she was killed. He almost went to the dark side. But he didn't. He dealt with it. He came out better on top. Like Jin, people call Jin a great Jedi because he's such a maverick and he disagrees with the Council sometimes. But he still follows the Jedi code. He still doesn't use any radically different Force abilities. And Plo Koon used Force Lightning one time. Well, he actually just can use it. And he didn't. He says he didn't feel anything. He didn't feel like the pull of the dark side. It's like, I can do it, and I'm gonna keep doing it because I can use it to save people. The Jedi Order was like, huh, all right. And there's like the claim that Mace Windu is a gray Jedi. Mace Windu isn't really a gray Jedi. He's just a Jedi. He doesn't really have any dark side training as far as I can tell. He was able to create a technique to channel his inner darkness into a weapon of light to feed off of dark side opponents. It's kind of it. So we're going to wrap this up with our hopes, particularly my hopes for the Last Jedi. One thing I'm hoping for, and this isn't just the Last Jedi, it's like the entire, as long as Kylo Ren's on screen, I want him to not be redeemed. I want him to be sort of viewed as this really tragic story. Not quite like Anakin. I don't want Kylo Ren to redeem himself. But you can just sort of get the idea that Kylo Ren wants to when he dies without getting redeemed. And you see exactly what Snoke is and what the dark side is. It's something that corrupts you, that takes, that preys on people who may have had the best intentions, people who are confused about their place in the universe, and that Snoke just preyed on that and twisted him into something. I want Rey to be a bit more interesting. Like when I watched The Force Awakens, I liked Daisy Ridley's acting. I liked what was presented on the surface about Rey, but in that entire movie, I never felt like I should care about Rey that much. Like, the reason I really wanted her to be Luke Skywalker's daughter was to sort of explain everything going on here. Like, I don't get how she can do all of this with next to no real explanation. I mean, she's coming off as a bit of a Mary Sue, which has been discussed about time and time again. It's especially talked about not just in Rey and her Force abilities, but with characters like Korra in comparison to Aang. And I just sort of want more explanations to how she's able to do all this other than she just can because she's that strong. That's not how the Force works. It's having the Force is one thing, but being able to use it is a skill. You learn to use it. One doesn't just say like, "Hey, this person's talking to me with the Force." I wonder if I can do that. That requires training. Like even moving something with the Force can take like a lot of training. Um, I don't really have any expectations for Finn. I hope I do like Finn. Finn was also a bit boring in The Force Awakens. The only time I really liked Finn was when Finn was freaking out, which really only happened in the beginning of the film. Whenever John Boyega freaks out, just love it. Just love it. Love that part of Finn. Um, I expect I will enjoy everything about Carrie Fisher's last time on Star Wars. Um, I'm. I don't think anyone's going to be able to look at that objectively and not realize who we've lost in Carrie. I want Snoke. I want an explanation of what Snoke is. Well, not so much what Snoke is. I don't really care what species he is. I want to know exactly what his role is in all this. I mean, he can't just be this Darth Sidious knockoff. He's apparently supposed to be more powerful than Sidious. So I have to wonder what his goal is and why is he supporting the First Order, this like Empire knockoff. Why did he okay Starkiller Station or Starkiller Base? Because it makes no sense. It's the dumbest idea ever. And I don't particularly care about Chewie. Chewie's going to be Chewie, and that's always good. There's never a moment we look at Chewbacca and say, we don't really need you here. It doesn't matter if you wanted him here or if Chewie serves a purpose. It's Chewie. His dialogue is always brilliant. No one's ever given Chewbacca bad dialogue. Prove me wrong. You won't find it. Christmas specials don't count. And again, finally, I want to see Luke Skywalker. I want sort of the best of both worlds with Luke. I want something that feels like we're getting a bit of the EU. I want to see this powerful person who George Lucas said is what Anakin should have been had he not gone to the dark side, if Anakin was more well adjusted. And I want to really just sort of fall in love with this character again. So this is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. If you enjoyed this video, have anything else you'd like to say about the Star Wars film, in other words, what you hope to see, what you want, what you've liked or not liked about this new direction Disney's going in with these films, please feel free to leave that in the comments. And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.